And today, accessories chain Lovisa added itself to a string of retailers reporting deterioration in their trading conditions. Yesterday, Kogan.com, before that, Super Retail, Nick Scali, Flight Centre, Michael Hill, The Reject Shop, Maya, of course, the list does go on. A phrase common to many of them seems to be intense competition, Brooke.
Yeah, that's our starting point for taking stock tonight with Stephen Shearer, who's founder of The Digital CEO and also former Facebook Australia CEO, and also John Winning with us tonight, CEO of the Winning Group and founder of Appliances Online. John and Stephen, welcome to Your Money Live and to Taking Stock. Yeah, we know trading conditions are really tough at the moment because we're hearing about it all the time, and John, you've got a front row seat to all of this, I guess. But the fact that we're speaking about this day after day after day at the moment, it's kind of got us wondering, you know, as a team, have we got a bigger problem here? Is this our moment where we're realising that maybe the sector has now had to pay for a failure to reinvest, to reinvent, to, at some point in the past, you know, look at the future and adapt to that? Stephen, can I start with you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that going on. I mean, in any market, there's good performers and bad performers, and sometimes when competition gets a little tighter, that's when the bad performers tend to tail off a little bit. You know, there's no question now, intensity of competition coming from online has increased, and I think that has taken the steam out of some of the businesses in Australia. But it's important to realize that, you know, these companies aren't collapsing. They're simply losing growth. They're losing momentum. And growth is usually, as John will tell you, growth is this thing that you really are building for in any business that you're aiming for. Now, growth is coming out a lot of these businesses, and it's because online is coming in and competition is intensifying. And arguably, Australia has probably been a little overbuilt in terms of retail over the past few years, so this is a bit of a shakeout.
Overbuilt? What do you mean by that?
Well, there's probably too many competitors in certain sectors and certain spaces, and they probably aren't lean and competitive enough. And so this can be considered, you can look at this as a good process, which is where, you know, retail is now starting to kind of purify itself a bit, and some of the stronger players are emerging.
It's quite interesting, John, and really interesting to hear from you as well, because obviously, you know, you started an online retailer some years ago, or took your business online, you saw the writing on the wall, so do you not have much sympathy for those who did not?
I definitely don't have any sympathy for those that do not. I'm hoping that we sit on the increased competition side of your earlier comment. I think that, you know, in terms of the way that the world was moving, it was quite obvious. We went into retailing online of appliances in 2004 before most fashion retailers, cosmetic retailers, you know, toy retailers, and the obvious things that you would expect to buy online. Books in Australia, for example. I mean, we were selling
before Myer and David Jones had a website. Almost.
Basically, yeah, we were selling fridges and washing machines before most were selling books or cosmetics or pet food online. And I think from our point of view, if you didn't see it coming overseas, I mean, Amazon at that point had been around for 7 years. They'd gone through the bubble and then bounced back. And from our point of view, it was just obvious. So we started early. We learned. We've gone through a lot of learnings that you need to go through in digital, and we've, you know, got a lot of sort of scars to prove that.
I think it's important.
Out on
That's
the other side of it.
I mean, there is a learning curve to all this. You can't just turn digital on overnight, and you've got to learn how to make it happen and how to be competitive.
Yeah, how to get traffic, how to convert traffic, working out that the customers become king. And in a business that, you know, traditionally might have been built on word of mouth, like my family's business, Winning Appliances, with Appliances Online, that gets absolutely, I guess, turbocharged, because people can, you know, I mean, even when we started, social media wasn't a thing, but now in social media they can talk about a bad experience, they can talk about a good experience. They're telling you what they had for breakfast. So to tell you that they had a bad experience with a retailer or an airline or whatever your industry might be is, you know, it's at their fingertips, and they're doing it every day. So when you've got good service, your brand advocates really get out there and turbocharge that growth, which is what we're seeing at Appliances Online.
Although what I find interesting about you guys is you're a multi-generational business. So you're the fourth
generation,
you're fourth generation. I was going to say third. You're fourth generation, which, you know, in this day and age, CEO tenures are getting shorter, and you guys would both know to invest sufficiently in, you know, digital futures and, you know, to future-proof your businesses. There's, you know, big money decisions, I would imagine, that have to be made at points in time.
And big risks that need to be taken.
And if you're focused on quarterly results, annual results, you know, CEO tenures getting shorter and shorter and shorter, that's becoming a very difficult environment in which to exist and to try to adapt, isn't it?
I mean, you could argue your business, John, is the advantage of being founder-led. like a lot of businesses in Silicon Valley are, and you don't have you don't face the.
Well, they say a lot of VCs in the Valley, unless they're founder-led and one of the shareholders has a technology background, they're basically almost Buckley's a nun, to use an Australian slang term, of getting any investment. So we're really happy that obviously we're founder-led. We understand technology. We see ourselves as a digital marketing company, as a logistics company, as a technology company, and as a retailer all in one. And I think that's really one of our strengths, is that we want to own that process end-to-end, and we're not someone that's outsourcing that technology and that digital arm of our business and saying, look, I don't really understand it. I've got the product. Can you guys help me sell it? We know how to get customers, and we know how to make them happy. And in turn, they sing our praises, which has worked really well for us.
So what about the future of this space then? Because as it stands, online retail only accounts for less than, I think, 9% of overall bricks and mortar retail in Australia. So we're kind of slowly moving there. And as we do, there's an increase in competition. We've got Amazon, we've got Facebook. Obviously, Stephen was former Facebook Australia CEO. They've got their own marketplace now, social media, people selling to each other. Do you have concerns?
We'll say we're in a flat market, right? Most people would look at our market and call it flat, or the analysts anyway. For appliances online, we're currently seeing 43% growth on the same period last year. At Winning Appliances, we're almost 20% growth on a business that's over 100 years old. So in a flat market, you'll see happening is other retailers feeling the pain of that. And from my point of view, I've said it all along, that technology or online retail doesn't kill retailers, it kills bad retailers. And I think that Australia is well behind the 8 ball of where it needs to be versus international equivalents.
And I can tell you, I mean, just 2 or 3 years ago, I can tell you, I would be sitting with CEOs or chairmen of the boards of major retailers in this country, and they thought Amazon was a bookseller. They didn't understand that, they didn't understand what was happening in online, and it was because we didn't have the intensity of competition here. We didn't have enough innovation going on. John was an exception to that, but duopolies, and we have a duopoly market largely here. They don't innovate in the way that they do in more intense competition. So we've had that sort of sleepiness in Australia for many years now, but I think that's coming back to bite, particularly retail.
Yeah, but I mean, we haven't really felt the effect of Amazon yet, even here in Australia, have we?
Not even close.
But I don't think it's just Amazon.
We're getting all these retailers with all these troubles. I feel like we're too weak to withstand, Amazon, which is.
There's plenty of successful retailers around the globe that survive alongside Amazon. Amazon's not the only beast, but certainly Amazon is something that's a force to be reckoned with. And a lot of people will ask me all the time, what do you think of Amazon? Suppliers are asking me almost every day, well, have you seen anything about Amazon? I hear they're not going too well. And I said, look, in my opinion, it's like this. And I don't mean any offence to our Tasmanian viewers, but I believe that global companies look at Australia like Australians look at Tasmania. It's a beautiful place to visit, but a market that if you want to be national, you have to be there, or from an Australian point of view, a global point of view, if you want to be global, you have to be in Australia. But it's quite small, doesn't get a lot of focus. At some point in time, when these global companies reach a good share in the rest of the globe, someone will look at a line on a P&L in Seattle, say at Amazon, and say, how long have we been down in Australia? What's going on down there? Here's $1 billion. Someone go and fix it. Send someone from head office to go down there and fix it down there. Like what an Australian company would do with the likes of Tasmania. We know it's a difficult place to deliver to, but we know we have to be there if we want to be national. And that's really how I believe these companies will see Australia. At some point in time, we'll end up on a line on the P&L and on their radar, and they'll just fix it with money.
Yeah, and I think John's point's a good one about being a flat market. In a flat market, it's where the weaker players tend to sort of fall by the wayside. And what we've seen in this country is it's not just Amazon, which is now on the rise, but it's the thousands of other small retailers and direct-to-consumer product makers who have leveraged platforms like Google, like Facebook, like Instagram to reach directly to consumers. And these are businesses that many of us never heard of, but they've managed to build these niches. And these niches, once there's enough of them, they then take the growth off of big retailers in this country. And so that's one of the real challenges here. It's not just the Amazons, it's the thousands of other retailers and small players as well.
We talk about the market as being flat, but it's one with a lot of risks in it. We talk about the wealth effect, and petrol prices at 10-year highs. We've got property prices falling. These are the kinds of conditions where people sometimes pull their heads in and tighten their belts up. Do we have kind of broad concerns about the state of the market?
Yeah, is flat the best we get?
Well, I think if you look at
downhill from here.
Yeah, if you look at say the groceries where you had the duopoly of Woolworths and Coles, maybe it's similar in terms of the petrol. If people get too greedy, then others will step in, and or maybe it is a point that the government or regulator will come in and wield a big stick, as you say, and change something. From my point of view, I think that the property piece is just a correction. I mean, it's a big correction for sure, but we've seen it with our home builders and our developers in our commercial arm. They've been enjoying, as have we in sales to them, enjoying great times over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think this is really a coming off. It's a sort of a demand and supply.
How do you judge how bad it is right now, and what do you monitor to see how bad it might get?
Well, it's not something, I'm not an economist, so I don't need to look at it too carefully, but for our own sales,
what sales are up and what are down?
It's quite simple. We talk to our cabinet makers, our home builders and our developers, and we say, what have you got in the pipeline? What are you expecting? And we see when the home builders' orders start to slow down, then we know in 12 months, 18 months' time, we're going to have a bit of a correction. When the approval ratings for our buildings, for DAs and the like, for the larger commercial builders start to slow down, then we know we're going to have a slowdown in our pipeline and we can correct accordingly. And at the moment, they're still going okay, but it's certainly not what they were seeing a year ago. I think it's still going to be okay for them for 12 months, but in 24 months, I think is when you're really going to see that pinch, which might line up with the 2020 that you're reading in the news.
And again,
the low point.
You know, neither of us are economists, but I think what we can say is that, you know, we've had 27 years of uninterrupted growth, no recession. You know, we've lived through a very robust time, and property prices have been part of that in the past 10, 15 years. And inevitably, we were going to have to pay the check. And the moment was going to come where things were going to come off the boil. It has started to come off the boil. It's going to pull things back a little bit, but you know, overall, we're very lucky in this country. Low unemployment, you know, low inflation. We've got a very robust economy. We've got some things to solve. There's no question we're not digital enough. We probably aren't innovative enough. We probably are not enough of a service industry as we should be. But I think the fundamentals in the economy are very strong, and we should be very thankful for that.
I think we don't know how well we've got it. And I think, like other parts of the world, we've probably got one of the biggest risks is the decrease in the middle class. I think that's a big risk, as we're seeing globally.
Can I quickly finish? I think we've got a minute or two left. But in all of this, we need someone to lead the charge, right? We've talked about businesses struggling. You know, we've looked at so many stories today. Cricketers saying they'll restore trust of the public, you know, after all the damage that's been done. You've got the banks saying we'll do better. We've got the mining industry saying we will restore trust. It was Rio Tinto saying everyone's going to restore trust. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we look to the politicians to intervene in these markets where we're struggling, and no one trusts the politicians either.
Well, we have a new Prime Minister every year at this rate.
So who's in charge? Who do we trust? Who leads us through what's you know, obviously going to be potentially some difficult times?
I think what it shows that this trust is a commodity, right? And it's a very precious commodity that every business and every institution on earth actually has trust and should have it on their balance sheet in some way. And I think what's happened in recent years, particularly with the rise of social media, is trust can become undermined so much more quickly than it could in the past, where you had much slower diffusion of things like word of mouth. You know, trust. If you had a bad customer experience, right? How hard was it for that to get known by other people? You write a letter to the newspaper or something. It was very hard to diffuse that. Now you can be diffused instantly through things like social.
Maybe it's a bit Darwinian, but I think it's going to fix itself through this trust. I think everyone's going to be responsible for their own sort of actions, and I think that if you're not looking after the customers or your fans in cricket's case, then I think that they will turn and move to another sport or buy from someone else, and it'll work itself out.
Right, I've left the biggest topic with the least amount of time, but perhaps a future discussion. It's just a starting point, maybe. Thank you to both of you, to John and Stephen. That's Taking Stock for tonight.